Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 13 of Mike Dicta. America's, we're going to actually do that again. I couldn't even make it through.
Come on.
In the most half-assed way.
That's our genuine sounding cold open.
Come on, kids. Gather round. Listen up. The magic clap.
M-A-G-I-C-C-L-A-P. Let's go. M-A-G-I-C-C-L-A-P.
Let's do it.
Clap. Magic clap. Clap.
Yep. All right.
This is very
Hey,
professional.
everybody. Welcome to episode... Oh.
Sorry, that's my
Take
fault. That's
three.
my fault.
Can I do it?
Nope.
Oh.
All right, be quiet.
Nope. I'm very possessive. Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 13 of Mike Dicta, America's best named legal podcast. I am your host, Charles Starr. We've got some veterans back. So let's say hi right off the bat to our panel. Say hello again to Christina.
Lucky number 13.
And back for a second time here. Say hi to Pat.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
And back again. It's been a while. Say hi to Andy.
Hey, guys.
So, we are Michael Cohen Dicta, and so every show apparently has to start with Michael Cohen.
He's an honorary
in one
panelist
way or another.
to me.
Yeah, Michael Cohen is the fifth Beatle.
The 50th Beatle.
And 50 is right, exactly. This week's adventure was his attempt to keep the Taint team from looking at his documents. That I think is still pending, right? Judge Wood has not decided whether to appoint a special master yet. The last time I checked in, she said that he had to actually put on the record that he intended to take the fifth. That's the Stormy Daniels thing. He had in the Stormy, there are just so many things going on. He told the judge in New York, Kimball Wood, that they needed to have a special master to review his privileged documents because he didn't trust the Taint team. And then he told the judge in the Stormy Daniels litigation, his attorney said that he was possibly going to take the fifth. And the judge out in California is like, cut the possibly shit, buddy. either put in an affidavit that you're going to take the fifth so I can decide on this motion to stay or don't. So I don't know what they did there. I think he was supposed to put that affidavit in.
How can you halfway take the Fifth
York,
Amendment? Like, how is that? How can you halfway take the Fifth Amendment?
Well, you can't.
No. He didn't halfway take the Fifth Amendment. He just had his lawyer. He just had his lawyer posturing in a non-binding way, and so the judge, his attorneys out in California were trying to get discovery stayed while all of his criminal stuff was pending in New York. And part of the grounds are that he intends to take the fifth anyway, and so the depositions wouldn't go forward. And so stay it in, while the criminal case is pending, or at least there's more clarity there. Mm-hmm. And the judge was like, well, if you want me to give you a stay on those grounds, your attorney's representations are not going to be enough on that point. I want you to go on the record and say that you're going to take the fifth.
What are the odds that he actually knows what's going on? Like, this is not a very good lawyer. Like, do you think he...
No, I think he mostly has pretty good... I think he mostly has pretty good counsel on this.
Yeah, and I don't think this is a real hard one to grip about how much trouble he's in or the problems he's got. Like, this isn't advanced legal theory.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, and I mean, I think Charles Harder, I think, may be one of the lawyers out in California, though I don't think the one who was arguing the motion. In New York, he's got McDermott, Will, and Emery, who was arguing the privilege stuff. And one of the things they tried to do was they tried to shield one of his clients. They're like, he's got three clients. Number one, everyone knows is Trump. Number two, everyone knows is Brody. Number 3, we don't want to say, and he has not allowed us to say it. And then the judge was like, all right, just write it on a piece of paper and hand it to me.
Ryan's with schmanity.
Yeah. Right. And so they did that. And then the judge issued the classic judicial ruling. Come on. she just like looked at the judge and was like, no, you can't keep this off the record. there is no legal grounds for you to just keep this off the record. And so they announced Sean Hannity, and then like apparently the courtroom was like that classic gif of like 8 journalists running out of the courtroom and knocking over the phone bank.
All of a sudden, the Curb Your Enthusiasm, theme starts playing in the background.
Right, and of course, like you can't. One of the sort of general things, it's not universally true, but general rules of privilege is the fact of representation is not privileged. Right. Correct. It may not be something you want to share. It may be sensitive, but it's not privileged, right. And you just sort of can't keep the court from knowing on those grounds, and you can't keep it out of the public on those grounds. Right. And so they just kind of shrugged and were like, ugh.
Yeah, and it's impossible for the court to, call balls and strikes with regard to any of the actual privilege calls you want them to make if they don't, if they don't have like the basic information about who the parties are and who's being represented.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess the argument was they were doing it in pursuit of getting a special master, and they were fully intending to disclose all of that to the special master, who was going to be responsible for making the calls. But they didn't want it in open court as a matter of sort of an unsealed public record, and the judge is like, that's not how this is going to go.
Too bad.
It's that tension between, I guess, the privilege versus your duty of confidentiality as an attorney, where, Cohen may have been, the ethics rules may have prohibited him from just telling anyone that Hannity was his client, but, he can't hide behind privilege once the court or the opposing party tries to get that out of there.
Right. Right. I mean, that really is it. Like, there are just very different rules for the kind of formal court process when issue is kind of joined on those matters, as opposed to just how you conduct yourself as a lawyer who has responsibilities to their client, where you just don't go around putting your client's shit out in the street when they don't want you to. Right. Right. And so that's it. Once the judge, and I mean, McDermott, Will, and Emery, to their credit, like in their original statement, they said that they were going to like appeal it essentially to the ends of process if told to disclose it. And when push came to shove and the judge asked them to disclose it, they're just like, okay. No.
We were totally thinking about that. It
was. It was a very bold bluff that was called.
Also,
and so
I just think it's perfect that Judge Woods was officiated George Soros's wedding. So now she's the Soros judge.
Wait, really? And, I didn't know that.
Yeah, all the Pizzagate assholes like Cernovich and Jack Posobiec and Laura Loomer have glommed onto that and are they had a whole bunch of memes about a week ago about Soros judge Kimball Woods going after poor Michael Cohen and Sean Hannity. The deep state rears its ugly head again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if it weren't that, they would have just gone back to the fact. They would have just called her a Clinton judge.
They did that too. Well, that shows the deep state has its tentacles everywhere. And then you imagine like one of those old political cartoons that has vaguely ethnic stereotypes. Yeah,
yeah. Because I mean, for people who are old like me, Clinton nominated her to be, I believe, Attorney General, and she got swept up, and it's just so funny to look back at it and think of this as the kind of thing that would disqualify a nominee. But she didn't pay her nanny's Social Security.
Yeah.
Those were the
at
fucking
a time
days.
when she was not legally required to protect you. You don't actually have to enter the dungeon. But he is back in the news for two reasons. Number one, he filed an incredible complaint to try to get the Attorney General and the entire Attorney General's office disqualified from being involved in his prosecution. Because he's now got two prosecutions. He doesn't just have the sex dungeon. He also is being prosecuted for sharing his charity's donor list.
So good.
Yep. He took his charity's donor list, and from what I could tell, he either had someone inside or he basically just emailed it to himself. Yeah. And then his campaign started fundraising off of the same donor list.
The Greitens,
and so he's in trouble for that.
A loop, because I'm like, any other year this would be a huge fucking deal, but like if you ask like anyone about this stuff, they probably wouldn't even know about it. I mean, like it's just such a minor thing.
Missouri is under 2 felony indictments.
Yeah,
and one of the things that's so stupid about it is that like sharing information like this is something that like political action committees and stuff, they all completely have down. You just publicly post it in like a bucket, on Amazon that's like not password protected. I think like BroPair's been uncovering these all year. And then you just go get the data. Like everyone knows how this collusion is done. It's an old scheme by now. But like emailing it to yourself from .gov to .home is like a really stupid way to do that.
Yeah. And so that's it. It's he's got a felony charge for abusing the charity, and so he's freaking out. He's freaking out about that, and because basically the Republican House in Missouri issued a report that essentially was just believe women. Yeah. Right. They're like, we spoke to everybody involved, and he definitely snapped a photo of this woman while she was bound and blindfolded and naked. And so they released this report, and the Attorney General is like, between this and another thing that I know about, which happened to be the charity thing, which dropped a little while later, he should resign. And then Greitens went apeshit and claimed that because he said that Greitens should resign, he and his whole office should be recused because there's a conflict of interest. But they literally never describe anything approaching a conflict of interest beyond the fact that they are both political actors in Missouri.
Yeah, does he not understand what a prosecution does? I mean, like,
they looked at evidence and then they decided that I was guilty. This is crazy.
Right. They really did. They accused him of like prejudging, as if the indictment itself wasn't kind of a statement of the prosecutor's opinion.
This is going to open up just a whole range.
If that worked, then every public statement by a prosecutor, you'd be good to go. You'd be like, well, as you can see, he seems to have made up his mind a little bit, don't you think? On the way into the courthouse, I would say, before seeing the evidence.
This is one of those times where the slippery slope argument actually makes sense.
I'll be making them all night.
Yep. I mean, it's a sad day when you can't say that someone horrible is totally horrible.
Well, and I just, I just love that Greitens has become a political cudgel between Hawley and Claire McCaskill during the Senate race in Missouri this fall, because you're going to have, I don't know much about Hawley besides his involvement in this, but as I'm no McCaskill fan, and Greitens is obviously a real piece of shit, and it's going to be great to see three people whom I really don't like, using each other for their own political advantage in Missouri.
Amen, Pat.
And I'm sure there's going to be some hilarious headlines, and so long as Mike Dicta continues through the election, there should be a deep well for us to pull from.
We're just going to become a Missouri podcast, just completely focused on the heartland.
Yeah, we apologize to everyone for not talking about Cohen, but we're back in the sex stuff.
Yes.
And then the other thing that came out was in the sex case, he tried to get the whole thing dismissed because of discovery abuse, and the back and forth on like basically he was alleging Brady violations. And then just a sort of quick statement on Brady for the non-lawyers in our audience. Brady is the Supreme Court decision that requires prosecutors to disclose exculpatory or information that tends to be exculpatory to the defense, so that they can properly defend their client, impeach witnesses, whatever. And there was a lot that wasn't done. I mean, basically the state hired an investigator who spent the entire deposition perjuring himself. Like it really is genuinely horrible. Like he said he didn't take notes during his interviews, and he did. And there were allegations that the district attorney specifically asked him to give all of his reports over the phone so there would be no writing, which isn't terrible, except that there was also like no real final report. And then when there was a final report, it was like after the depositions were over and they didn't turn it over immediately. And like there was like some missing sections of the tape. Like it was actually genuinely bad. Like it was so bad that the prosecution in their response literally doesn't deny any of it. Right? They didn't try to make excuses. All they said was the investigator's notes of the interview of the victim are not really relevant because you have the entire recording of the interview with the victim. And so anything that's different between the guy's notes and the actual recording doesn't matter because the notes aren't her words. Her words are her words.
Right, there's no loss of exculpatory value.
What?
There's no loss of exculpatory value if those notes aren't turned over.
Yeah. Right. And, I mean... There were other things, but they said that the entire prosecution's response was, look, we admit that there were lots of problems and we apologize for all of them, but the remedy is not dismissal. Like none of the cases that you cited, the remedy was dismissal. All of this we're not even close to trial yet. So you have all of this information now. You can redepose anybody that you want. You can, call our guys liars all you want at trial, but we're not there yet. And the judge basically said the same thing.
I just have a question about the procedural posture, and maybe this is my fault for sloppy reading, but what were the circumstances of these depositions? Were they part of a separate civil case?
No, I don't think so. I think they deposed the investigator as part of this proceeding.
Interesting.
Like they may have gotten a motion to after like the late disclosures on all of that, they may have gotten the right to depose him.
Okay.
On this stuff. And, the other interviews were done over the course of the investigation, and so,
well, I'm no Greitens fan, but between this investigator and our investigator friend from Brandon Dassey, just hope the listeners out there know that these investigators are likely full of shit, and you should not believe them if you're ever on a jury.
Okay.
One thing that I think
this is
funny,
the Mike Dicta picks for jury nullification, everybody.
Yeah.
One thing that I think is funny.
Don't nullify if you're on the Greitens jury.
Except for Greitens, this is the one exception, right?
His. Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Do not nullify in the Greitens case.
Fuck this dude.
But though it's funny that you say that because in the middle of Greitens' motion to dismiss, he gets very woke.
Oh.
He gets very woke in a way that I imagine he never is. Because in his requested relief, where he's asking for dismissal, he says that if this can happen in this case, it may be happening to other defendants in this courthouse.
Wow.
So Governor Greitens, friend of the common man.
Governor Greitens, SJW.
This is something I wanted to point out both about this case and it also happens with Cohen, where all of a sudden these guys discover, like, wait, prosecutorial abuses, or like Cohen, where they'll say, like, wait, parallel construction is a thing. Like, even though they say they won't turn it over, there's no way we would have to know it. They might just have the evidence, and then they'll know where to look to find a reasonable pathway for them to, suddenly acquire the evidence that they wouldn't have gotten through privilege. And these guys, they know about all this stuff, but they suddenly, of course, care about it when it is aimed at them.
Welcome to the show, bitch.
Yeah. I mean, that really is what it is. Like, as soon as any one of these guys who are like really banging away on law and order find themselves under scrutiny, they're like all of a sudden, Thurgood Marshall.
Yeah, whoa, back off, man. Calm down. This is, people have rights.
Hey, man, what's with the cop attitude, cop? Yeah, so it's pretty bad. He also said that like the whole point of them doing it was to taint the jury pool. Like it's really he's very aggressive in support of rights, but it really is pretty bad. Like you read the thing and you're like, okay, I am sympathetic to how bad this investigator is, but as someone who's been through some real like discovery wars just in civil depositions, the fact is that all the judges ever do is yell at you a little and then allow you to depose the person a second time.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's pretty bad. Governor Maureen Todd.
Yeah, and it's like your prize in winning a discovery fight is more
Devils.
discovery. You get the right to just like look for anything, depose anybody. But in this case, Greitens, he might not necessarily be hoping for that because he might reveal bad stuff about this investigator, but he might not have as much to pull over, much to uncover.
Yeah, I don't think it changes any of the positive facts of the case in that, the woman was blindfolded and there was a picture taken of her that she did not consent to, and then Greitens transmitted it over, electronic means, whatever the statute says.
Extra depositions, I go fix that.
Yeah, it sounds like it just probably got uploaded to the cloud, but that's probably enough. But he disputes all of that too. By trying to point to inconsistent statements, and the state's response to that stuff was, this isn't the time for that. Just impeach her on the stand. If you think her statements are inconsistent or implausible, then eventually you'll get to trial and deal with that. But they also say, but probably not with these lawyers, because they also have a motion pending to dismiss his counsel, and they bring it up here too, because apparently Greitens' personal attorney to defend against these charges is also representing the state of Missouri.
That's a conflict.
What?
That's a conflict.
In other litigation, and it's not like they don't really go into the details of it, but they basically are like, as we said in our motion to disqualify, which I didn't dig up and read. Apparently, the litigation is somewhat connected. And so, there's some overlap, I guess. And so he's like, you're representing the state in that litigation, and you are defending him here. So where you're against the state of Missouri, and so they're trying to get him kicked off. They're trying to get him.
Well, that's an issue of like direct adversity. I'm not a conflicts lawyer, but I run conflicts, and there's no chance I'm going to be able to get that by, any sort of ethics committee.
I'm generally skeptical of people that want to get somebody's attorney disqualified, but I don't know. I guess that, if he was representing like a community college trying to recover on a contract or something, that would be one thing, but
it doesn't matter. Like the ethics rules are pretty consistent though. That is still direct adversity. If the state is prosecuting Greitens independently of, as the governor, and this guy is representing the state in another issue, that's an unwaivable conflict.
I think that government conflicts are a little bit more expansive, so that there is a relevance standard that might limit it. I think because government has such a broad scope that if you were ever represented the United States, you're just like screwed out of all possible litigation against them. They don't limit it that much.
I'll concede the point. But begrudgingly.
All right.
And then the last thing I want to note is just because it was funny as a tacked on thing. At the end of their response, the state of Missouri had to add a 1-paragraph motion for leave to file out of time because somebody fucked up the copying and they filed 45 minutes late. Like, they don't actually say what it is, but it's clearly some, Professor Frink intern tripped with the binders.
Look, as a guy who has had to file out of time because I have my caseload is too big, I'm just going to say I defend those people.
Hey,
and
whom among us has not tried to submit 45 exhibits to a motion for summary judgment at 11:45 p.m. and have had Pacer reject it for like the 13th time in a row? I mean,
very relatable.
Yep, it is very relatable.
That feel win.
Not trying to claim things I haven't earned, honest man. Slick raking out guesses on this jam. What kid diamond on the 2-2 grand? Trying to help raise our youth to man. See if the ruler Rick his space to slam. Help clean up this land. The reputation of this man. With hole and withstand. Outcast and slick, the answer is in it. Hun, you need to get your ass on the dance floor this minute. We bruised up, knock you out, shoes, socks. Show your ass move, you forgot what mad smooth snugs. Lottie-dottie. We like to party, don't make me get money and platinumize my body. With bright stuff known to earn a dice. Love blind folks, but like somebody turn the lights off. Immense strength popping out of muffin. Make famous artists that's dead hop out of coffin. At the real estate.
And so now we move from Missouri to Kansas.
Really hitting the Midwest.
Flyover country.
Yeah, we are. We are all over them, and we're going from after this. We're going to Ohio.
Woohoo!
But Kris Kobach got hammered on the voting rights stuff. I don't know if everyone read this, but he was held in contempt for not notifying the people who were getting frozen out by his voter ID law, which the court, at least on a temporary basis, found was unconstitutional in one way or another. And back in 2016, he ordered the state of Kansas to notify everyone that they could, who were subject to these new voter ID rules. He was like, you have to tell them that they're registered. You have to tell them that they could vote. And the state spent 2 years just dicking around and not really notifying anyone in the way.
It was mailing a postcard.
They were
it's not like it was a complicated way to do it. It was, you don't even have to pay for a first class stamp on that thing. You get that in bulk. It's like 20 cents per.
It seems like Kansas in the past 5 years or so is doing this radical experiment in not governing.
Governor Brownback, baby.
Yeah, and this is just another example of that. They just completely abdicated any responsibility to their own citizens.
Reading the opinion, I brought back to Charles' comment from episode 9 that basically the judge is going to figure out who the asshole is and rule against them. Oh, Tarek, pardon.
No, that's
Sorry,
Tarek.
You're not here tonight. Otherwise, I would have given you full credit.
Tarek
but
theory.
You decided that you had more important work to do. So, but he hammered the state there. He basically called the state's witness a liar several times. And if this, I think, granted, they haven't issued their opinion yet from the bench trial, but I think this was a really strong signal that they're going to find in favor of the ACLU. And against Kobach, which is going to be fantastic because, let's be honest, fuck that guy.
Yeah, I mean, just to go through what happened back in 2016, what Kansas did was complicate something incredibly simple because they had to do two things. There was, number one, a known group, a known universe of voters who were frozen out by the voter ID law. And he was like, you have to register them and tell them that they're registered. And Kansas tried to they dithered on it and they tried to kind of half-ass it. The first thing they did was they notified everyone that they could vote in federal elections, but not local elections. And so they had to go back before the judge, and he's like, no.
You can vote in all.
Tell them that they could vote in all elections. And they spent 2 years pretending that they didn't understand the order. Like it's very complicated. And like, I guess Kansas sends out, and we get something the same in New York City. I imagine it's the same everywhere. Before an election, the Board of Elections sends out a postcard that says you're registered to vote in X primary. Your polling place is at this address. This is your assembly district, and this is your state senate district. And it just has like all of that information on a postcard. And Kansas sounds like they have something similar. It says that you're registered, and it tells you where to go to vote. And everyone who's registered is supposed to get this one very recognizable postcard that everyone on the record evidence considers proof that they're registered. And they just didn't send that to all of the people on the other list. Like they just didn't. Having sent them the first thing, which was like this half-assed thing, they didn't send them the official postcard. And then the witness for the Secretary of State's office was like, well, I found it very confusing, having sent the first one, that I'd also have to send this second one. And the judge was just like, you've spent months telling plaintiff's counsel that you don't have to do it at all. And then I guess at the hearing, after months of yelling at plaintiff's counsel and denying that he had to do it, at the hearing, he's like, I think I did call them. I have in my appointment book that I was calling the 105 county officials and telling them to do this, but he didn't put his calendar in evidence. And at the hearing, they were still denying that they had to do it. And so the judge is like, I don't believe you called them. There's no way that that's true. And literally everything that you've done in the last 2 years has really seemed like an exercise in intentionally not following my instructions. And so he was like, we're getting this right for 2018. Send these damn things out to everybody. And then he held the Secretary of State himself in contempt for non-compliance. And so he basically was like, send everything out properly. And also he made them pay attorney's fees to the plaintiffs for all of the attempts they made to try to get
2 years
Kansas
of motions practice. It's going to be fantastic.
So something that I think is like at least a teaching moment out of this, if you aren't as familiar with litigation here and you're a listener, is that this is a standard eternal struggle and slog with impact litigation. Impact litigation meaning like kind of a social justice-y, not necessarily focused on one particular plaintiff, but an attempt to change some reality using litigation. The eternal battle is going to be enforcement. So you get an injunction, you get a settlement agreement, you get a consent decree, and all that stuff has to be enforced. And a standard tactic to exhaust the court's patience and resources is just vague compliance or non-compliance or partial compliance, and just force the other side to bring you to court again and again and again. And then you say, well, Judge, I did this, or that was confusing, or all the stuff they did here, this was like weak tea compared to what, enforcement looks like on the environmental side, for instance, where people will show like a vague attempt to comply, and then they'll say, I thought that was enough. But essentially, like, the judge eventually just gets exhausted, and the fourth and fifth time they're in there, they're like, it's fine, it's done. Whatever, I don't care. We can't just do this forever.
Exhaustion litigation? You mean my ex-wife?
Francisco Mejia of the Cleveland Indians, when he was a young ball player, took out a loan from a company that is basically a predatory loan company. He took out a loan for a total of like $300,000 and something $360
against
360. Yep. For I don't go pretending you read it more closely than I did. For against 10% of his future earnings, which is probably going to be like the 10% will probably end up
about
10 to $12 million.
This guy was a top 100 prospect for the Cleveland Indians this year. I believe he is a third base / catcher. Depending on whether he signs an extension with the team before his arbitration years play out, or he hits the market, the dude's going to get paid a lot.
Yep. And so the complaint is basically that the contract was unconscionable. They approached him when he was young and poor and didn't really know a whole lot, and he had illness in the family and a lot of expenses. And over the course of like 3 or 4 months, they made him 3 loans totaling, like we said, $360,000. And each time they ratcheted up the amount of his future earnings that they would take to the point where he's now on the hook for 10% of everything. And he is claiming that the entire process was unconscionable because they took advantage of someone who didn't know anything, and they bought, $10 million with a $360,000 loan.
Okay, first of all, this is the only topic that I prepared for this week, so I'm going to talk a lot. So the thing about this is I'm just going to be the heel here. I don't think that the contract just as you laid it out right now is unconscionable. I think that they picked him when he was a rookie, minor league player. I think $360,000 is a lot of money. I think he could have gotten hurt in the intervening time between when they gave him the contract and, when he actually was called up to the majors. What really makes this unconscionable is the fact that they paid for his attorney.
Well,
and he wasn't represented in this,
right.
And he doesn't even speak English.
And I just want to touch on unconscionability. There's to have a contract be rendered, to have the court rescind a contract on unconscionability grounds, you need to show that it's procedurally unconscionable and substantively unconscionable. And just, a very quick 30-second primer, procedural unconscionability deals with the way that the contract was formed, kind of people talk about negotiating power between each party. If I point a gun to your head and say, sign this or you get it, that's procedurally unconscionable. Where substantive unconscionability deals with the actual terms of the contract, is whether it's so one-sided as to, kind of really be against justice, and that a court will refuse to enforce it just because it's, on its face, it's absurd. And I think going with what Christina's discussing, there are very, very serious, I think, procedural unconscionability grounds. Again, dealing with especially the fact that they allege they paid for his lawyer, or he alleges they paid for his lawyer.
Yeah, the plaintiff says, right. I mean, it's funny. They deny that, obviously. The loan company denies that they did it. Their answer is, Christina, I think, pointed out one of the ways that they will defend the substantive unconscionability argument is they signed all of these contracts when he was an A-ball, right? He was in the low minors when they did it. But I think even then, right, they signed these contracts when he was an A-ball in 2016, but he was in the majors in 2017. Everyone knew that this kid was on a rocket ship to the top.
So what really plays into this is the fact that, they paid him a lot more than they paid anybody else. So they make a lot of these contracts, and he got 360, and most people are getting 20 or 30. So they knew that they had a future star on their hands. That's got to be.
There's thousands of minor league ball players across the country. Basically when you're drafting someone, it's kind of a crapshoot. They're gonna make it to the majors. There's that new adage. There's no such thing as a pitching prospect. Hell, I've been waiting for Kevin Gausman to become the ace I was promised in 2013 for 5 years now. I don't think it's ever going to happen. But, you kind of have to spread the money out from their business model. You have to make a lot of these, $20,000, $30,000 loans in the hope that, you have one guy who hits it big.
And look, that's certainly going to be their defense. But if he wasn't defended by counsel, here's the thing. in a sense, the procedural unconscionability and the substantive unconscionability are going to merge a little, because if they were his representation, right, that creates a procedural unconscionability problem because he didn't have anyone properly representing him at the formation stage. But it also can create a substantive unconscionability problem because while you could say in the abstract that $360,000 is a lot of money, and actually I think there was actually a huge drafting mistake in the complaint where they actually refer to it as being a large amount of money, which I certainly would not have done were I drafting the complaint. But they would say, look, if he had his own counsel, if he had someone who was actually looking out for his best interests, his attorney would have known that he was being underpriced at $360,000. And his counsel would have said, I can get you a much better deal leveraging your future earnings in a way that isn't a percentage. You know, like they're not the only loan company out there. And if he were getting proper advice, the pricing of the contract would have been better. But that might not even be sufficient for substantive unconscionability. But it at least would have had someone
just to provide like maybe what I think might be the other side on the procedural, maybe the substantive unconscionability. I think there are places where the facts have problems here, right? So the contract's in Spanish. They make a big part in the complaint that like he speaks Spanish, but like that doesn't make you disabled. Like the contract is in Spanish, right? So
well, I'm not sure. It's funny how they say that. I'm not sure that that's true.
Right.
They say that the signing was in Spanish, but they don't exactly say that the contract was in Spanish. So I'm not sure exactly where that falls. I mean, it may be
the thing that
true.
I would say, even if the contract was in English here, so the paradigm case you learn in law school about unconscionability is stupid. It's called Williams v. Walker Thomas, and they're still teaching it because they didn't realize that like the global financial crisis happened and there's a million new unconscionability cases. The doctrine was largely sort of considered a little bit frozen or dead for a while.
We talking rent-to-own furniture here, Andy?
That's right. So in Williams v. Walker Thomas, there's this cross-collateralization term. It's hard to understand, and what it means is basically like you rent-to-own multiple pieces from a place, TV, couch, a stereo, and they're all cross-collateralized such that you're not done paying for any of them until you pay for all of them. So if you got $10,000 worth of stuff, you pay $9,999 and you quit, they have the right to repo all that $10,000 worth of stuff over the dollar that you're delinquent on. And this is like a difficult term. It's written in a very legalese way in the case that I'm talking about. And it's difficult for the person to understand. And what I think is missing from this case is that 10% is not hard to understand. Like, you can say the guy's not educated, and you can say that, like, well, he speaks Spanish. I'm not really sure where they're going with that. But 10% is not hard to understand. Now, we could say it's substantively unconscionable. You could say that, like, yeah, but anybody who becomes a good ball player, anytime this contract becomes profitable, this contract term is extremely unequal because you paid, a few $100,000 and you get 10% of their entire ball career. So substantively, I think there's a good argument, but procedurally, I don't know that the facts look great here to me.
I mean, I'm going to disagree just because if BLA hired this lawyer, that's kind of like a per se violation of the ABA rules. I think it's 1.8. Well, that's usually third parties, but I think it's 1.7 where you can't have like even the personal conflict even that relates to your business when you're representing somebody. And if BLA is paying this lawyer, then he's personally conflicted via his business relationship with BLA from kind of negotiating against them. And I mean, I think it took place in the Dominican Republic, so I'm sure he's not an American lawyer. If he was, I bet they would have splashed his name all over that complaint.
Wait, you think F's going to give him trouble? I don't know. Did you look at F1? Unless the client gives informed consent. I would 100% bet that they were like, do you want us to hire a lawyer? And he goes, Yeah, and they go, you understand that we're going to pay for your lawyer? And he goes, yeah, that's better. That's actually better for me. I want you to pay for my lawyer.
Well, I mean, have you guys looked into the sort of the counter complaint that BLA filed in?
That's also very bad.
That's really interesting.
Oh, yeah, that was a dumb move.
Yeah, they're actually suing. Yeah, so they're suing the baseball player for even talking about this. Like this is supposed to be like, why are they doing that? Like, go ahead.
Well, go first. Explain what they're doing, because then I'm going to sort of disagree on that. But
okay, so
Christina.
So BLA is suing the baseball player for even like talking about this complaint. Like they're saying that he was under, I mean, basically an NDA, not even to like say that he had a contract.
It was a confidentiality provision.
Well, but it's right. It's a broad confidentiality provision, and the reason they say that there's the confidentiality provision is because the structure of the contract is essentially a trade secret.
I'm making a
right. It's competitive business information for them, how they structure the terms. And I will say, I think that counterclaim is not as bad as everyone is making it out to be, because they're not mad at him for attaching it to the complaint. They're mad at him for attaching it to the complaint and not filing it under seal. Right? What they say throughout the counterclaim is when he filed the claim, we asked his attorney to to pull it and file it again under seal, and they said no. And I think that's really what, like, they're not saying we're mad at you for disclosing it to the court. They're saying we're mad at you for filing a confidential business document in a public filing, not because it makes us look like assholes. The whole nature of the complaint would have made us look like assholes, kind of. But there are other loan companies in this space, and the way that we structure our contracts, like, to put the best light on it, the way we structure our contracts is our business model. And so we put the confidentiality in place in order to keep that stuff confidential. Now, you can be skeptical about that, and I certainly am. Like, I think they keep this. I think they keep this confident. Like, the confidentiality provision is also to kind of intimidate people into silence in the way that most NDAs are. But I think they also have a decent case that, you know, if you had just filed it under seal. I mean,
I have not read the entire contract, full disclosure here. I'm sure there's a severability clause in there that discusses if any,
me either.
You know, term is illegal, that'll be severed from the remainder of the agreement. Well, it was also weird that they didn't have a liquidated damages clause attached to the confidentiality agreement, because, you know, this seems like the exact type of clause that you would attach liquidated damages provision to.
I mean, they didn't. There's no claim that there's a liquidated damages provision. All they really ask is for an injunction prohibiting him from disclosing. Well, they just ask for an award of damages for the breach, which has to be just, they want 10%, because he only made one. It kind of seems like
sloppy drafting on both sides to me. I mean, the fact that the ball player had an unjust enrichment claim in there as opposed to the declaratory judgment. I mean, let's be honest. I have written a ton of 12b6 motions that say, well, you have attached a contract to this. An unjust enrichment claim, for people who don't practice law, is a quasi-contractual claim. It doesn't really fall under contract law or tort law, but the whole point of unjust enrichment is that there's no contractual terms involved.
It's a dumb claim.
Yeah, so if you're if you're attaching a contract as Exhibit A to your complaint, the court's going to say, and if I'm your opponent, I'm going to say, well, Your Honor, he attached a contract as Exhibit A, so this claim is, it fails on its face, and I'm not going to waste my client's money going through 14 sites as to why.
I laughed at that too, Pat. I'm glad you said that.
Right. I guess maybe you parse out the two and you say he made one payment of a little under $10,000, which would have been the first installment, right? And so you say you want an injunction because the contract is unenforceable and on unconscionability grounds, and the unjust enrichment is the $10,000 that he coerced out of me, which I knew that I shouldn't have had to pay. And so, like, maybe the unjust enrichment claim would be limited to that payment, because he also essentially says that he wants like that part of the resolution would be giving back the $360,000, presumably with some kind of statutory interest, or I don't know how they resolve the fact that there's like 2 years of interest on the $360,000 that he got.
I would be surprised to see this case settle out. I think that plaintiffs need to know if their business model is unconscionable or not. I think they need to know that. And so, like, I guess, I mean...
You mean defendants?
Yeah, the defendants need to know that. And so, because right now, they're like, they bet on a bunch of players, I think Pat was saying that earlier, and they're going to get some winners. And if this is, like, only the winners are really going to bother litigating this. But, like, when they finally get a winner, that's the one that's going to make the business model profitable. And if they're going to lose all the ones that actually win, all the ones that actually do well... This is not a working business model, and they need to know that.
I think the defendants probably feel pretty confident. Like, I don't like it on moral grounds, but I think the entire history of securities litigation against banks is that they don't lose this kind of thing very often. Like most of the reason why there isn't a lot of this kind of consumer investor litigation anymore is because it's all thrown into arbitration. But even before it was in arbitration, it was very hard to win these kinds of cases as a plaintiff.
WRMS, y'all, be a big Rod Piper on your radio. I want to send a shout out to Chaka Khan for calling us earlier. She's somewhere riding around in New York City. Hey, I'm going to take the 15th caller for 2 tickets to see Chaka live tonight. Yeah, hey, I'm sending this next one out to my people working hard over at the All Good Car Wash. Y'all keep it gangsta on your Power 93.
It ain't all good. True. Things ain't going like you think they should. It's all on you. It ain't all good. And that's the truth. Things ain't going like you think they should. It's all on you. I don't care about
all right, so everyone probably saw that the Democratic National Committee is like making a move, and they got their litigating pants on. And so I just want to start by reading the entire case caption.
Oh, no!
That is how we are going to kick this
30
off.
30 minutes later.
Yeah, in the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York, the Democratic National Committee plaintiff versus the Russian Federation. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation, the GRU. The GRU operative using the pseudonym Guccifer 2.0. Aras Iskanerovich Agalarov, which I'm not going to pronounce.
Neither is anyone that wrote this complaint.
Like anything close to true. Yeah. Emin Aras Agalarov, Joseph Mifsud, WikiLeaks, Julian Assange,
not Donald
J. Trump for President, Inc. Donald J.
saying
Trump
not notably
Jr.
not Donald J. Trump himself.
No, not Donald Trump in his personal capacity, just Donald J. Trump for President, Inc. and Donald J. Trump Jr., but not as the sole fail son. Paul J. Manafort Jr., Roger J. Stone Jr. Holy cow, Jr. and the middle initial J are the theme of this thing. Jared C. Kushner, Richard W. Gates III, and George Papadopoulos.
Gotta leave some blank
John
spots.
Does 1 through 10. Yeah, those John Does 1 through 10 are also, if I recall, all GRU agents. GRU is the modern
that's the FSB.
KGB.
GRU is the Russian. And Andy, as a former troop, you probably know better than this. They're like the DIA.
We didn't
like
work
the military intelligence.
When I was a troop,
Fucking
we weren't doing a lot
ass.
of Russian related stuff.
Yeah, but he's just trying to figure out if you know the different like.
No idea.
My wife does, but she's asleep.
We're focused mostly on China.
Yeah, no, he has no idea. Andy was a line cook on a sub. So we have and then they sued them under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, and of course RICO, and the Wiretap, and the Stored Communications Act, and the DMCA, and misappropriation of trade secrets, and then the DC state trade secrets law, and the Virginia trade secrets law, and Virginia and DC common law trespass and the Virginia Computer Crimes Act.
And for being really mean.
It is 54 pages.
It's such bullshit. It's such a fucking joke.
The first, to be clear, like the first 35 pages or so, is everything that you already know. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just a recitation of all of the stuff that's been in the news in incredibly public ways. And they have just gotten someone to slap some statutes on the end of it that they claim that they're violating. And they do. It's like, it's literally a footnoted
Eric Garland wrote this fucking complaint.
It's got like 5... Yeah, it's got like 5 or 6 pages. No, it's not, but it's not Eric Garland because they don't try to weave it as like a wackadoo conspiracy. They just say it really plainly in the way that you know, right? Donald Trump Jr. had a meeting with the agents at the hotel.
But they do try to play up the drama. No one is above the law. You know, the opening salvo was a cyber attack on the DNC carried out on American soil.
Yeah, I mean that is almost literally how it starts off, right? Yeah. No one is above the law. In the run-up, Russia mounted a brazen attack on American democracy.
It is Metal Gear.
It's an episode of 24 that they just tried.
Yeah, the opening salvo was a cyber attack on the DNC. Yeah, so it's crazy. So it goes on like that, and it mentions all the stuff that you knew. The Flynn having a meeting and Donald Trump being at the the Miss Universe or whatever pageant in Moscow and meeting with this pop star and his oligarch dad and but none of it is new. None of it is new, and what they essentially are suing the Russian military. And anyone have any opinions on how they're going to serve the Russian military
in the newspaper
to respond in this action? Do they have like a?
No, this is be one of those fantastic, like Christina just said, sue by or notice by publication. I'm sure like the Southern District of New York has like a local rule that says, well, if you put this in the New York Times for so many number of days, that counts as service.
It's going to be a great Simcoe 2
the
case.
Failing New York Times. You think anyone reads the notices in the failing New York Times?
So I got bored and I didn't finish. What do they want? I mean, do they want someone to go to jail? They want to arrest Vladimir Putin? I mean, you know the news bite that people say people just keep relitigating the 2016 election. This is literally relitigating the 2016 election.
Yeah.
And I don't understand what do they want to occur?
Well, some of it is damages for trade secrets, like the loss of trade secrets and the damage.
Well, yeah, and then there's other stuff.
So they want money,
declaration, injunction. They got ideas.
And I guess the real thing here, I'm not going to analyze the computer abuse claims and all of that because I don't.
And neither will one person listening to Mike Dicta
about any of it. I don't know how you sue a foreign espionage operation for hacking you. I don't know that works, and I don't know that the CIA is necessarily going to be any more willing to respond to those cases in other countries than Russia is going to be on this one. But the one big one is they sue them under RICO, the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, which is two things. Number one, it is a way of breaking up the mob, right? That's really why it was written.
It's the Sopranos law.
Yep, it is the Sopranos law. And number two, it is what every wackadoo non-lawyer idiot thinks they could sue anyone they don't like with.
Yeah. Right? We're going to get hit with a RICO suit. Mike Dicta.
And the civil side of RICO doesn't often get actual play because the organizations that are prosecuted under RICO, you don't go filing a fucking civil suit against.
La Casa Nostra.
Yeah, like, oh, you know what? I'm going to sue John Gotti and his boys. So, okay, well, let me know how that turns out. Fuck, man,
I was paying protection money for 10 years, and the terms were unconscionable.
Just kind of dovetailing with the Sopranos theme here, like, half of these characters seem like they would have been in like a 3-episode arc in season 4 between like the Agarlov father and son, the Russian pop star. I mean, have you looked at what Rob fucking Goldstone looks like? There is no way that Christopher and Paulie aren't like fucking lighting that guy up in his really shitty apartment while his like stripper girlfriend cries in the next room.
Oh God, I just looked him up. Holy shit.
Sorry, I had the Sopranos notes and I had to use them, otherwise I would have forgotten.
I don't mind that you did. But you really kind of combined Christopher Moltisanti and Ratso Rizzo.
This is Vito. I'm seeing Vito here.
I don't know.
Hiding in there somewhere. All right.
Sorry. Please continue.
But the idea behind RICO is that the conspiracy itself is the corrupt organization, right? The Genovese family was the corrupt organization. And like it's not just doing bad things. It's that the operation itself is like bad. And I mean, the Russian army is the Russian army. It does Russian army things. The presidential campaign actually got the guy elected president. It was running a real campaign.
It was still a bad thing, though.
What? Yeah, sure, it was a bad thing. But it was sort of the Donald Trump campaign for president, as much as it will be a world-ending disaster, was like actually doing the business of running a campaign. And like, I mean, I just don't know that any of this sort of, I mean, civil RICO cases just almost always get dismissed because, I mean, at least like the lawyers are actually kind of decent in the sense that they figured out like most of what they needed to plead. And so they kind of pled all sorts of interesting, like all the kinds of facts that you would expect. Like they knew the statutory sections and they didn't kind of do it in the most bare bones way. But it's just, it's literally just sort of a PR move that I don't think even they think has any chance of,
I have no doubt that this is going to be the subject of many desperate emails I get from Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden in the next 6 months, telling me that if I don't donate $25 before midnight, they'll be able to fund their lawsuit against the Russians, which I'm sure is being done pro bono by Cohen Milstein.
I think that's very astute, Charles, that like the complaint is very fact-rich. It's very fact-rich, and it's very hard to get a complaint like this dismissed. And so if you look at the lawyers from the idea of just like everybody who's employed by the DNC, which is like people who are grifting it in order to use their professional qualifications to make money off of it, it's a really well-written complaint. Because this ain't going anywhere. They're going to discovery here.
They're a high-level plaintiffs firm. They're very...
I mean, it's Cohen Milstein. They know what they're doing. But like I said, it's like 35 pages of... Like, it's all cited. They have 107 footnotes, right? But all of the footnotes are like NBC News and Politico and The Telegraph and BuzzFeed and Time Magazine. And that's one of the top ones. And so the New York Times and ABC and the Washington Examiner, which is very funny to see cited in something against Trump. But, like, it's just, it's all the news, right? The first 35 pages are literally the same news that's been driving you crazy for 2 years. And they're just patting you on the back and saying, as you suspected all along, this violates every statute in the book. And I just, it's
Rachel Maddow,
in a way that just makes me sad.
Yes, that's a good.
But not even like it's more like it's like Louise Mensch. Like the way they're going to serve the GRU is the marshal of the Supreme Court is going to grab Vladimir Putin by the scruff of his neck in the lobby of the United Nations and make him.
I'm just glad that we got to talk that Fancy Bear was mentioned in the complaint, which is my absolute favorite code name for any sort of foreign adversary, because Fancy Bear. I mean, come on, guys. That's an inherently funny term.
I mean, and that's competing with Cozy Bear. Ooh. That's the Twitter poll. Is what is the better foreign agent name? Fancy Bear and Cozy Bear. But it's like I don't even. I just wish. I just wish it were something. Right? It's not like I'm any less desperate to see every one of these people like naked, poor in the street and
in jail.
and this isn't going to do it. No.
But there's no way that this is going to be the method to get them there. And it just makes me sad that
some of the allegations here are just like I tweeted about this once, but like they're saying that defendants' actions caused DNC donations to drop significantly or something. Like, guys, you need a fucking mirror. This is not. This isn't that's not what happened here.
It may have been the candidate that made the donations drop precipitously.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be the funny thing during the deposition when they're just going to be like...
Did you just bone the election yourself?
Aren't you the kind of person that Jesse Farrar would tell to knit yourself a car and into a river?
There was a great line of the complaint that said that the defendants sowed discord within the Democratic Party at a time when party unity was essential to electoral success. And I mean, at that point, it's like... yeah, exactly. Deborah Messing's Twitter feed. The amended complaint is going to add Jill Stein and Susan Sarandon. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
And then Lawrence Tribe and our buddy Seth Abramson will really go into
the fact that these guys are given this credit I should say it doesn't blow my mind because Larry Tribe's been out of it for a while, but the fact that he's giving it credit as a Harvard professor is like such a joke.
I mean, it really is bad. I mean, wasn't Lawrence
Larry Tribe he was one of the biggest gay rights litigation lawyers. He did Romer in the 80s. He was in the room for Lawrence v. Texas and had advised on it. Like he's done incredibly big things. And he, by all accounts, I don't want to say by all accounts, by some accounts of professors I had in law school, he is kind of an asshole in person. But a well-meaning one, and I just had no idea about this side of him until I really got onto Twitter and was like, this guy's lost it.
That's why no one should get on Twitter, because it's just like you realize everyone's bullshit.
Right.
I had Richard Painter for my PR professor, and I kind of liked him until I realized he's just like this huge blowhard online who I now make fun of all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it is frustrating because he really was a guy who was generally regarded as one of the top constitutional scholars, historian, scholar, and just lately he has just become sucked into the kind of vortex of opportunistic politics. And he, his biggest private client recently was like a coal company opposing Obama's regulations. And so it's like, first he throws away his lefty cred in pursuit of a huge paycheck, regardless, frankly, of the merits, because I have no idea what the merits were. And then and in a desperate attempt to reclaim it, he will make insanely risible legal claims. And there was some other thing, and now I'm just forgetting it because it's just the kind of thing that's just so ephemeral. But some like dumb thing got out in the Twitter ether, and he repeated it in a just asking questions kind of way, and then had to walk it back when it became clear that it was factually wrong. And it's just like, I was talking about this on Twitter earlier today, is that it just makes me sad that the response to like the Trump campaign and all the sort of crazy misinformation online and the accusations of fake news and the way no one reads the same sources or acts in good faith. Like, the Democratic response to it hasn't been to reject it, but to just start adopting it. You know, like we now do the same bullshit. Like Louise Mensch is, and Claude Taylor, True Facts Stated, and all of these people are just, it's just like a huge ecosystem of fake self-reinforcing nonsense for people who want to just, wish away the entire world around them. And
I love that True Facts Stated entire political operation is buying billboards that make fun of the length of Donald Trump's tie and say GOP with a hammer and sickle in the place of the O.
That's good. Nailed it.
You think I'm kidding? That's powerful. Actually he raises.
I did not think you were kidding.
Wow.
I had an offline friend who mentioned something about him recently, and I said, "Let me tell you what I know about Claude Taylor," and then they started walking away from me. But I could not blame them. I wouldn't wish the knowledge I have on anybody.
But like today, Joy Reid is claiming she was hacked. For
probably GRU operative number 3. That's my guess.
8 years ago.
GRU operative number 3. That's who did it.
Yeah. Right. Of course.
Richard 3.0.
Of course. That was the real deep cut. Is that they're gonna go vandalize 8-year-old blog posts,
hacking into the Daily Kos servers to.
And of course, everyone spent all day proving that she was tweeting the same shit at the same time. It's like, did they get your password too? And you didn't notice in your notifications when everyone was retweeting this same thing back then. So it's like, why? Why would you just become unable to criticize, the intentional undermining of the media when you just sort of bullshit on that kind of stuff? I mean, just fucking apologize. Do you know how easy it is in this world, right, to just have been against gay rights 8 years ago and be a full rainbow now?
Yeah, just ask Barack Obama.
Right. Ask Barack Obama, ask Hillary Clinton, ask literally 90% of the Democratic power structure how easy it is to become woke on that.
I just want to read one slight line from this complaint that I looked. So this is just when they get to the bottom of it, right before they start the prayer for relief. I think there's this conclusion in one of the paragraphs that says, "Under the laws of this nation, Russia and its co-conspirators must answer for these actions." And it's the most self-serious, it just, to me, just summed up the entire complaint as just, embarrassing. Fucking embarrassing.
Yeah, it really is. That's the tagline to the movie where this complaint becomes an action thriller. Where an intrepid attorney takes down
Vladimir Putin accepts the jurisdiction of the court, shows up thinking it's gonna go okay, but then he didn't see this coming. He gets caught in a logic trap.
He decides to represent himself.
He gets fucking matlocked on the stand.
Right, because it works in Moscow. Vladimir Putin is undefeated in local litigation. And with that loopiness, we're going to close. I want to thank everyone for coming on the pod today. Christina and Andy and Pat. My name is Charles Starr. Thanks again for listening to my Dicta.
Thank you, everybody.
On Twitter. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye. Thanks. Bye. We hit
all right.
Stop, right?
And so, what? Yeah, hit stop. Hit stop.
She was a shark smile.